Yeah, let me start with an integrated report. What we're looking at is long-term value creation. So really the emphasis on long-term. We have 6 capitals that we focus on. It's a multi-capital approach. So in addition to financial and manufacturer capital, which is really what we see in annual reports today, where we have the financial statements, management's discussion and analysis, a president's letter, we look beyond that. We want more emphasis on human capital and intellectual capital. What is the company working on in innovation? What's its long-term view? How's its workforce, the health of its workforce? Do people enjoy working? What's the turnover? And also we want to bring in natural capital information and social capital information. People usually think of that as ESG information. And so we want to bring those items especially into the reporting and not as much focus on what was the past, what did we do this past year, but more looking at how we created value for the long term, even in this year, and what we're looking at in our strategy for future years. Yeah, I think ESG, I see it as kind of in a silo. It's a lot of emphasis on it. It was in the financial reporting area, so I wasn't exposed as much to the sustainability area. I see that group inundated with surveys and different requests for information, and I think integrating that into the mainstream of corporate reporting will help that group. First, get a seat at the table in the strategy development of a company, and also get more resources as where it's deserved in the ESG space and the sustainability space. So I think integration with financial reporting and also other things like human capital reporting, intellectual capital, bringing that all together, long-term view, value creation space will really help the ESG sector. I think it's really the reporting solution for what we're seeing is a desire by companies to focus more in the long term. We've seen company executives being under more and more pressure to produce results in the short term, and they're looking for a way out of that treadmill, what I call it, the quarterly earnings treadmill. And I think our multi-capital approach of focusing on other things besides financial capital and how you've done the quarter, looking at long-term human capital issues, what's the satisfaction of your employees, what's the turnover of your employees, are you keeping them, not having to retrain them all the time, what's your environmental footprint, what kind of risk do you have out there from an environmental standpoint. Bringing those capitals into the mainstream really helps in getting that long-term value creation. And so I think that's where integrated reporting really helps, is that focus on multi-capitals. What I think is a really good example is Intel, and we've heard a lot of criticisms in integrated reporting. Hey, we just don't want to do another report. You're going to make us do just another report, especially in our regulatory environment in the United States. Well, what Intel did is took the requirements of the Form 10-K, which is the annual report that companies send to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and didn't follow verbatim what was required under the way the SEC sets it up. Talk about your business, then talk about your properties, talk about management's discussion analysis, have your financials. They kind of turned it around and they said, here's what Intel's strategy is, here is our long-term value creation story, and they looked at it in a multi-capital approach. They had a separate section on human capital, a separate section on environmental capital. So they kind of took the requirements that the SEC puts out there and turned it around and told their story in that context. And I think that's very creative of trying to do something different in this current regulatory environment.